The Kings get back on track as they beat the Blazers at home 128-107 to end their 7-game homestand on a strong note. It wasn't the best homestand, but it was also a very tough one. So they were able to end it the right way. I was hoping that this would kind of be a get-right game for everyone. So you could go into the end of the season on a positive note, go into this 5-game road trip where the Kings just have to get a lot of wins if they want to maintain their positioning in this play-in race. So this was a great start because it was just a nice, easy victory, cruising to the win pretty much the entire way. It was the first game I went to all season. It was a fun one. Most of the players being healthy, being available, other than Jake LaRavia, who had a thumb thing, I believe. But Malik Monk back into the lineup, but not into the starting lineup, which was the big thing and kind of the odd thing because he was announced as the starter. When they were announcing starting lineups, they said Malik Monk, and then in comes Keon Ellis. It was very confusing. I didn't know if I was seeing wrong. I was very confused, but it was Keon Ellis starting. And after the game, Doug Christie clarified that it was just a mix-up with the scorers table. Their plan all along was to start Keon Ellis. When Malik Monk had his injury before this and he came back, I was really hoping that game where he came back would be the game where they have him on the bench and start Keon Ellis, because it can be hard sometimes to take a guy out of the starting lineup. I mean, does it have to be? Not really, but the whole politics of the situation. You want to keep everyone happy. Sure, I get it somewhat. You don't want to take a guy out of the starting lineup, but when you're inserting him back into the lineup after he's been out, it's like, oh, you can start him on the bench and then see how things go. They didn't do that when he came back from his first injury, but now they're doing that here. And Doug Christie did not commit to Keon Ellis being in the starting lineup long term. He was wishy-washy on it. Malik Monk only played 17 minutes. Keon Ellis, on the other hand, had a career high 6 steals. I mean, it worked very well. I'm happy that it worked well in this game because it's more likely we'll see it going forward. So maybe, just maybe, this is finally the game where the change has been made. Although I'm not too confident. I feel like we might go back just with the way Doug Christie answered questions. I don't know, but everything about this lineup looked great. From Keon Ellis getting his 6 steals, the defense looking super connected in the starting lineup, Malik Monk coming off the bench, scoring 16 points in 17 minutes, and the Kings cruising to a victory against a solid Trailblazers team. This is not a bad team. This is not a team you can take lightly. It's also not a team you should lose to. And Jeremy Grant was out, DeAndre Ayton's out, Rob Williams is out. So at home, it's not a game you should lose, but it's also a game that I know we've seen the Kings lose plenty of times. When you let a guy like Shaedon Sharpe get going, or you let everyone on the Blazers start getting downhill, because Anthony Simons, Shaedon Sharpe, Denny Avdia, those guys scare me. And so Keon Ellis being in that starting lineup was very important, because I think this is actually some of the most connected we've seen the Kings play defensively. They forced Portland into bad shot after bad shot. They forced them into 50 3-pointers. Portland only took 38 shot attempts from inside the arc. They were 39.8% from the field, 32% from 3. We've seen plenty of times where a team's taken 50 3-point attempts against the Kings just because they're constantly wide open. That was not the case. They took 50 3-point attempts because the Kings were grinding down the clock, constantly making the right rotations defensively, constantly being there to contest anybody driving to the rim and being there before they could get all the way to the rim, and forcing them to have to settle for tougher 3-point looks. And that's just something that before, the Kings starting lineup from before with Malik Monk in place of Keon Ellis, they don't rotate in the same way. We saw so many good things defensively, where one guy gets beat, the help was there every single time. It was there early, and say the help would come from the corner. Then the defender who was getting beat by ball then peels off to the corner. We saw that a million times. The effort was there defensively. The connectivity was there defensively. And it's because you have DeMar DeRozan out there. When he gets beat, it's not Malik Monk who's there as the help defender. It's Keon Ellis. And that one little thing makes all the difference in the world. Just having one more defender and having an actual balanced lineup. And something else we saw was when Duop Reith came in and was playing as a stretch five and he was knocking down his threes. And something we've been seeing more from the Kings defensively lately is not having Sabonis or Valanciunas have to go out and contest 3-point shots. Instead, it's other guys on the perimeter. So there were multiple possessions where I saw Keon Ellis defending ball. They would kick out to Duop Reith, and even though he was just defending ball, he sprints out and contests that 3-point shot. And, I'm not trying to use this as talking negatively about Monk. I just want to illustrate the defense. We saw the exact same thing happen in the second half where Malik Monk was the defender instead of Keon Ellis. And the ball got kicked out to Duop Reith in the corner when Sabonis got pulled into the paint. And Monk stood there. Like, he didn't even try to go out and contest it. And that's just the difference. So I really hope this wasn't just a one-time thing. I really hope it's what we do going forward, because then Malik Monk just gets to come off the bench, and immediately he came in and he was scoring, he was getting to the rim, he looked explosive, he looked very good for a guy coming back from an illness. We saw a two-man game connection between him and Sabonis, and we just saw balanced lineups. And there were a few lineups that weren't great, but get Jake LaRavia back, and then even those lineups go away, and you have completely balanced lineups for 48 minutes. And so that was a lot of defense talk, but the offense was flowing as well. To start the game, we saw Sabonis get to a little push shot, and that was great to see him make that shot because he struggled really badly last game against OKC. And he's just been struggling with his jumper and any sort of outside shot, even a push shot. He's been struggling shooting the ball as a whole since he's come back from injury, since he's been in and out of the lineup for the past month or so. He's been struggling. So it was nice to see that go down for him. But then it was wild, the offense we were seeing. We were seeing Keegan Murray get the ball, come around these Sabonis screens, attack downhill, and then go to a floater 2 straight possessions and make them both. We also saw later in the game, I think the third quarter, maybe it was the fourth, where he comes around another Sabonis screen and finds Sabonis rolling to the rim for a dunk. So it was nice to see Keegan being able to operate in the pick and roll, showing off a little bit of scoring with the floater, a little bit of passing as well. Keegan started off very hot. He had a quick 9 points. Those 2 floaters. Then he had the transition take against Donovan Clingan, which was so fun. Him just shouldering Clingan out of the way and then dunking on his head. And that's becoming a bit of a trademark Keegan Murray move in transition, using that shoulder to create space. Then he knocked down a 3, and the Kings were generating a bunch of good looks, but they missed their first 3 or 4, but they were getting really open looks. I think Keon missed his first 2 pretty open threes. Keegan missed his first 3, but they started to fall. And once that happened, they started to build a lead, because the Blazers, the way they were scoring was really tough shot making throughout the entire game. They didn't get that many open looks at threes. A lot of their 3-point shots were deep wing threes where they were trying to force the Kings into long closeouts, but those are tough shots, and it was Shaedon Sharpe, and it was nice to see Shaedon Sharpe not hit every single shot against the Kings for once. He went 2 for 5 from 3, still a good percentage, but it's not 4 for 5 or 5 for 5 like I feel like we normally see. And it was just nice to see Portland not hitting an absurd percentage from 3 against the Kings, not having Toumani Camara come out and hit a bunch. He went 2 for 8. When that first Scoot Henderson 3 went down, when we were going under that screen, I was like, oh no, here we go. We're going to keep going under these screens and he's going to knock them down. And we kept going under the screens, but he didn't keep knocking them down. But offensively, LaVine started to get it going, hit a transition 3, had a couple of nice takes inside. Also, I like defensively. He finished inside, then sprinted back the other way to guard Shaedon Sharpe and prevent a transition opportunity. And he did a very good job of defending Shaedon Sharpe. I think other than the rebounding aspect of it, he did a good job of defending Shaedon Sharpe. And then when Duop Reith came in for Donovan Clingan, because Clingan really just wasn't playing all that well. Offensively, he was really just letting the Kings sink into the paint. And defensively, I mean, sure, he provided a bit of a shot blocking presence, but the Kings were still going at him in the paint and finishing with the floater, like Keegan going to 2 floaters. So they were kind of nullifying him on both ends. And so Reith comes in. And so now that Reith is in, the Kings go to the next way that they can attack you, and that's Sabonis getting into the post. A few possessions just kind of didn't go anywhere, and he just put Duaparith into the post and scored on him a couple of times. The first subs of the game that we saw were Malik Monk and Trey Lyles coming in for Keon Ellis and Zach LaVine. We saw a lot of Trey Lyles at the 4 alongside of Sabonis, and so him coming in for Zach LaVine, that's a lot of speed, foot speed on the perimeter that you're kind of subtracting, but that's what happens when Jake LaRavia is out. And so that was a bit of a worry. There were a lot of lineups where it's DeMar DeRozan and Trey Lyles and Sabonis, maybe adding a Malik Monk in there. Like, those were the lineups that were a bit worrying defensively, but it never got too bad, and the Kings were just constantly scoring, so it didn't really matter. They did try to put Jonas Valanciunas on Matisse Thybulle, and they put Sabonis on him as well when he was out there at the same time. And so pretty much what the Kings are saying is, we know you don't want to involve Matisse Thybulle in the action. We know that you want Duaparith to be the guy screening and popping. So we're not putting Valanciunas on him, so Valanciunas doesn't have to guard the pick and roll. But Matisse did come in, knocked down an early 3, but he ended up going 1 for 5 from 3. Trey Lyles hit a transition 3, and then I think I talked about this, was it after last game, where I said I wanted Zach LaVine to have the mindset of Trey Lyles. Lyles showed you exactly what I meant, because he makes 1 3, next time he's coming down the court in transition, gets the ball, immediately fires another transition 3 from the wing, and missed that one. The Kings offense stalled a little bit towards the end of the first quarter, but DeMar DeRozan was kind of there to bail us out, hit a midi, and then, he was playing point guard. DeMar DeRozan was playing point guard with Malik Monk coming off the bench. And so at times it can feel a little slow, and when Sabonis is out there, we want to play through Sabonis as much as possible, but there were the moments where DeMar would push in transition and find the right pass. He did that a few times. And DeMar has been a great passer out of the post this entire season. He found Keon Ellis for 3 towards the end of the first quarter. He had another double-double. I think this is his 3rd of the season. And I believe all of those come after the Fox trade. So very much leaning into this point DeMar, 21 points, 10 assists. Only 10 shot attempts, although he did have the 11 free throw attempts. But you could definitely see, especially in the first half, his main focus was to get others involved. He was getting into the pick and roll a lot, especially with Sabonis, and he was doing a very good job of that. To start the second quarter, we went to a lineup of Malik Monk, Markelle Fultz, who we saw a lot of this game, Zach LaVine, Trey Lyles, and Jonas Valanciunas. So this is a lineup where Markelle Fultz is kind of playing in place of Jake LaRavia. And I thought Fultz had a very good first half. Not as much so in the second half, but the first half was really good. And I think it was because his game was very simple. He wasn't trying to do too much. He wasn't out there looking to score, because that's not what we need him to do. And when he's looking to score, defenses can just back up off him. And if he's making those shots, great, but that's not really what the Kings offense needs to find its flow. Instead, what we need him to do is really be a point guard and play make for others, even when he's out there with Malik Monk, because we want him to set Malik Monk up to score, but mostly I think we want him to set up Zach LaVine. But he had a few plays. One where he gets the ball in the middle of the court in transition, and he just he glances behind him, sees Malik Monk's trailing him, takes one dribble inside the 3-point arc, then drops a pass to Malik Monk, who hits a 3. And just that one dribble inside the 3-point arc is what gives Malik Monk just enough space to hit the 3. The defense tried to get out, but that one dribble inside just pushes them back, gets them on their heels enough. And we've seen Markelle Fultz do that quite a bit, where in transition, he's dribbling either into the heart of the defense or across the defense in transition. That's another effective one. And he's finding these trailers. And then he had another play also kind of in semi-transition where he just got the ball, and Zach LaVine had kind of been cooking. He was attacking in transition. LaVine was getting into his bag, both in the mid-range. He was getting into his ball fakes at the rim. And so Fultz was like, I need to get this guy the ball. He got LaVine the ball in the wing. And I can't remember exactly how he scored, but LaVine, I think he got to the mid-range and scored. So I really liked those kind of simple but effective kind of floor general plays from Markelle Fultz. That spot in the rotation kind of keeps going back and forth between Devin Carter and Markelle Fultz. And maybe the Kings coaching staff sees Fultz as a bit more of a replacement for Jake LaRavia than Devin Carter, and Devin Carter more as the Malik Monk replacement when Monk was out. I don't think it's quite as simple as that, but Markelle is the bigger, longer player. Also at the start of the second quarter, Valanciunas was in there against Donovan Clingan, and I think that was just a moment where Valanciunas was more comfortable because he was against a more traditional big, even though Clingan tried to step out to hit a three, but Clingan, a more traditional big, one he's just going to bang with inside, when he doesn't really have to get out and guard on the perimeter. So it felt like he got more comfortable. I thought the team rebounding against Clingan inside was really good, but the big thing about that unit to start the second quarter was just Zach LaVine being aggressive, and it wasn't about the three-point shot at all. It was just him attacking inside and being able to finish in the paint, because that's what he's been lacking over these past few games. He's just been trying to push into the paint super aggressively, just throwing himself into shot blockers, trying to get a foul call, and it hasn't been working. But he was super strong with the basketball, muscling guys out of the way, finding space inside to finish, and the shots were just going down. And once he gets that confidence, it is over for the other team. 29 points, 0 assists for Zach LaVine. Honestly, yeah, that's what we want to see. Score the ball. I don't care about his playmaking. When he first got here, I was like, okay, maybe he can be a bit of a playmaker with these units. Nah, just score the ball. I don't care about the playmaking part anymore. Shaedon Sharpe did keep the Blazers in it a bit. He hit a tough three, had some nice takes to the basket. Valanciunas had a tough game on the defensive end. And this is more of what I expected from Valanciunas when he first got here. But, I mean, when he first got here, he was blocking shots, making plays defensively. This past week or so has been a little bit of a reality check here. Like, okay, no, this is more who Valanciunas is defensively. He's going to get blown by. He's going to get finished over. He's not going to be able to get out to the perimeter. A little bit of a reality check here. So there are plenty of lineups that are probably going to be more effective with Lyles at the 5, but that's not to say Valanciunas can't be effective, especially against a guy like Clingan. The next lineup the Kings had in there was Malik Monk, Zach LaVine, Markelle Fultz, Keegan, and then Sabonis. And that lineup went a bit cold, and they were giving up a bunch of offensive rebounds. That was the big problem. The rebounding, especially Zach LaVine, it was not good. He was not boxing out Shaedon Sharpe. Markelle Fultz also, there's a moment where both Markelle Fultz and Zach LaVine were just looking at this ball, no one going after it. So there were the rebounding problems, there were a couple of turnovers, but no offensive drought lasted too long. And it really was about the Kings' ability to get inside, get into the paint, and just get easy buckets. Zach LaVine crossed up Shaedon Sharpe for a nice dunk. And just between Zach LaVine attacking, Malik Monk was attacking, getting inside and finishing, Sabonis inside, Keegan to start the game attacking and getting points in the paint, and Valanciunas getting a couple of buckets inside, also getting to the free throw line. They just pounded the paint time after time after time. Zach LaVine also hit a tough corner three. And then DeMar just started to get to work, drawing a bunch of fouls, getting to the free throw line, went 9 for 11 from the free throw line. And on the defensive end, the rotations were amazing, forcing the Blazers into tough end of shot clock shots, multiple shot clock violations for the Blazers. It was beautiful defense. It truly was beautiful to watch all of the rotations happening. There's nothing better in basketball, in my opinion, than watching a team for 24 seconds constantly make the next rotation. Every guy on the Kings was ready to make the next rotation. And there are just those possessions where it seems like someone on the Blazers is going to get open. They're moving the ball, but the next defender is just always there. That's so beautiful. And the main offense that Portland was getting in the first half was from Deni Avdija. He was hot from deep. And I said in my preview in this game, the Blazers' combination of size and speed scares me a little bit. And that's between Shaedon Sharpe and Deni Avdija. So Avdija kind of showed that off, drew a bunch of fouls, got to the free throw line, just combined his shot-making ability with his size and speed to get to the rim. And the Blazers drew up a beautiful play out of the halftime break to start the third quarter to get Avdija another open three. But outside of Avdija, really the only way that the Blazers were scoring was through the tough shot-making of Shaedon Sharpe or Anthony Simons. I think Simons might have gotten a couple of open threes, but for the most part, they were just tough shots that you'll live with the defense. And so the Blazers did have some nice scores coming out of the third quarter, but the Kings responded. LaVine getting to the mid-range, DeMar finding Sabonis running the floor. Things did get a little bit sloppy for the Kings offensively in the second half. DeMar tried to go behind the back on a pass that was picked off, and Sharp went the other way, and the Blazers got within 15 after it was an 18-point lead at the half. But I think that might have been the closest they got, was 15. And a little while later, I can't remember exactly when this happened, but then in a transition opportunity, DeMar got the ball, went behind the back again, and this time it worked out. In the third quarter, the substitution pattern was a little bit different. You had Malik Monk coming in for DeMar instead of coming in for Keon Ellis and Zach LaVine with Trey Lyles. There was no Trey Lyles early. It was just Malik Monk for DeMar. And immediately, Monk and Sabonis went to the two-man game, got Sabonis a dunk. Sabonis earlier also got the dunk from Keegan in the two-man game. So really, it was just nice to see Sabonis getting some easy looks for once. There were some lineups that I didn't love. Monk, Fultz, DeMar, Lyles, Sabonis. That's the lineup that's screaming for Jake LaRavia, but it never got too bad defensively. And there were some moments where the Kings were just throwing the ball away in transition, or Keon Ellis just lost the ball trying to catch an inbound pass. But the Kings really started to try to push the pace, and Fultz just threw a ball out of bounds forward. Then at the end of the quarter, when that really annoyed me, where I don't know what the difference between shot and game clock is, but it had to be like only 4 or 5 seconds. And Sabonis gets the rebound and just throws an awful pass up to Trey Lyles. I was just like, just hold the ball. You know, it's time and score. You're up 21. So I realize I'm complaining about something up 21, but you're up 21. Just bleed the clock down at the end of this quarter. Try to get a bucket, but at the very worst, try to go in up 21 into the fourth quarter. And instead, you know, you give the Blazers a little momentum. They run the clock down, hit Duop Reith in the corner for 3. But having a 21-point lead at that point, you can afford a few mistakes. Sabonis finally hit a 3, which was great to see. He just needed one to go down. He had one go in and out earlier. DeMar had hit a midi, Monk hit a 3 towards the end of the third quarter. And so I'd say the only bad thing about the second half was the turnovers. It was that Sabonis bad pass, the Fultz one in transition, Keon not catching the inbounds pass, and then some offensive fouls. I think Sabonis and Fultz both set moving screens. LaVine had an offensive foul. I can't remember if it was the second half, but Malik trying to throw an alley-oop to LaVine and that failing. Malik just can't throw alley-oops lately. I don't know what it is. Sabonis also failed one in the first half after he had a horrible attempt against OKC. So there were just some of these sloppy moments, but the fourth quarter was just give the ball to DeMar and we'll bleed the clock down. And that's what I love about having DeMar. Sometimes it's not great when the game's a little closer, but when you're up 20, just give the ball to DeMar and get out of the way for 12 minutes in a row and you'll be fine. Because at that point, it's just a numbers game. If you're taking 24 seconds off the clock every single time and DeMar is creating at least an okay shot every time, when you're up 20, that's just a numbers game. It's going to be very hard, even in the worst case scenario, for you to blow that game if you're not turning the ball over. But I just hope that the Kings understand, like, you're playing that way because you're up 20. If you're not up 20, you should still be playing through Sabonis. You should still be trying to play fast pace, right? If the lead's only 10 or so, you still need to be trying to play at a faster tempo. But when you're up 20, DeMar just completely slowing the game down is fine. And he just kept drawing fouls or creating open looks. So it kept working. And actually, when we went to try to play through LaVine, try to play through Sabonis, that's when some turnovers happened. LaVine turned one over and then almost turned it over again. And Keon picked it up and then he turned it over and just led to some easy breaks for the Blazers. And the game was pretty much over, but for some reason, the Blazers still had their starters in. But you want to end the game on a good note. You don't want to end it on these turnovers. But a little before that, we had Keegan getting a dunk and then Keon Ellis getting a steal in the front court and hitting a 3. That was pretty much the play that ended it. That was a hype play. And then after those turnovers, Keon came out, got another steal, easy dunk to truly put the game away. Then that's when we went to garbage time. A beautiful game. I don't know if there's a player that played poorly. And Portland is kind of the caliber of team that we're playing on this upcoming road trip. So you need to be able to get wins against teams like this. Also, it's not out of the realm of possibility, at least before this game it wasn't, that Portland catches us in the standings. If they won this game, they would have been right with us. So hopefully this was the start of some good vibes going into this road trip and the start of figuring something out with Keon Ellis actually being in the starting lineup. That's the big thing. Don't let this just be a one-off game. I understand that it very well could be, but that's not going to stop me from being very happy about the win because the team played very well on both ends of the court. So hopefully they can actually take this momentum. Zach LaVine after the game, he got asked like, how do you guys take what you did in this game and take it into the road trip? And he's just like, we have to, there's no other way. It's like, yeah, but also I have an answer. It's, start Keon Ellis would be, that's just, a start. But the field goal percentage difference is crazy in this game. 39.8% from the field for the Blazers, 64.9% for the Kings. I think I saw a stat that the Kings went 30 for 35 in the paint, which is insane. That's 60 paint points along with 22 for 27 from the free throw line. Sabonis had a monster game, almost the 2020. He had 22, 19, 6 assists. 6 turnovers isn't great. Had some questionable passes, but knocked down the three, was looking good. Knocking down those little mini hooks and the push shot. So hopefully he can get back on track scoring wise. LaVine had 29, 13 for 18 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3. And I love that because he didn't just catch fire from 3. He relentlessly attacked the rim and put his body into guys to create space and get easy looks at the rim for himself. DeMar, like I said before, 21 and 10 on only 10 shot attempts, 6 for 10 from the field. You got Point DeMar. Keegan, 7 for 11 from the field for 17 points and 7 rebounds. Back-to-back very good games for him offensively. And then Keon Ellis, 10 points, a career high, 6 steals, add in a block, great defense from him. And then off the bench, you have Monk playing 17 minutes and going 6 for 9 from the field, 2 for 3 from 3 for 16 points. And so I would assume he's going to play more than 17 minutes going forward. That was probably just working him back in, but I do hope he continues to come off the bench. Other guys off the bench, Fultz, nothing crazy in the box score. He had 4 fouls, but just the 2 points, the 1 assist, the 1 rebound. But I thought he had a super effective first half. In the second half, got a little sloppy, was turning the ball over, whether that be actually like throwing the ball away or an offensive foul. But I just liked that he came into the game and played, I think, the role that he needs to play. And that's not a scorer. It's a defensive player who's also just going to make the right passes on the offensive end. And then you had Lyles, 14 minutes, the 3 points. Nothing too crazy for him. Valanciunas, 6 points, 6 rebounds. And the Kings now move to this 5-game road trip? 6-game road trip. 6-game road trip. Oh, I thought it was 5. Okay. 6-game road trip. Wow. First, it's Orlando, Indiana, Washington, Charlotte, Cleveland, and then on the second out of a back-to-back, you have Detroit. So out of those games, there's only one that you point to and are like, that's probably a loss, and that's Cleveland, although, of course, we just beat them, and they went on like a 3-game losing streak. Also, it's just towards the end of the season, so they could be resting a bunch of guys. I don't know. The games you need to win are the Washington and Charlotte games for sure. And then you have 3 other games that are kind of in the middle in Detroit, Orlando, and then Indiana, who's been playing very well. But the next game is against Orlando. And of course, Orlando had to lose to the Mavericks. So thanks, guys. But Orlando, they have their injury problems with Jalen Suggs being out for the season, Mo Wagner being out for the season. It puts their guard rotation a bit in question. But sometimes none of that matters if Paolo's just going to go off. And that's what he's been doing lately. He's been on fire. But it's crazy. They started Corey Joseph last game. Like, how is Corey Joseph still in the league and he's starting and playing 22 minutes? That's crazy to me that he's starting over Anthony Black, but I mean, sure. But like I said, none of that matters if you can't guard Paolo. I mean, we've seen before games where the Kings can't guard Paolo, also can't guard Franz. Just their size and physicality. You can't let yourself get bullied. You have to be physical from the jump. And that help defense has to be there early. Against Portland, it was there early. And we didn't allow Portland to get much in the paint. It's got to be the same and even better against the Magic when it comes to Paolo. Everyone's just going to have to be locked in at defending the paint. But when you're locked in at defending the paint, that obviously leaves the perimeter exposed. So you also got to be willing to make those rotations and close out hard. So anyways, that is it for this episode of the Royal Report. I will be back on Saturday to recap that game against the Magic. So I'll see you guys then. Peace.